What am I doing these days? Well, I'm just writing down as I was waiting for the introduction, some of the people that I've seen recently. 6 days a week, almost 5.5 to 6 days a week, I'm at this, dealing with dating, consulting people, whether locally, people face to face, or throughout the world. Recently there was a radio show called Headlines, and the focus was on broken engagements and quick divorces. And that, I was interviewed for that, and it has over 50,000 listeners, brought out a flux of girls who came to see me with broken divorces. And it's a shame, because what we see today, I'll give you an example, is a girl who's going out with a guy from BMG. You think the guy, have midos, who, when they were taking a picture, she noticed something that was not right. When they were taking a picture, because her family took him out to a restaurant, he pushed her only brother out of the picture. Get out of here, we don't want to see you in the picture. And from there was more dominating and controlling type of of behavior, and she broke off the Shidduch. Similarly with another girl who came to see me recently. The reason why I tell you this is because I need to educate you what's going on. There's a lot of good, Baruch Hashem, but it's like Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We're seeing both. And so you need to become empowered, and so you know how to deal with it. By the way, I have my cards here, just because I might forget. Anyone who needs to touch base with me or speak with me, and it requires a consultation, please take a card. For the people out in the audience or on the Torah Anytime Beat, it's 305-206-1916. Anyone who needs me for any help whatsoever, anywhere in the world. Anyway, so let's go on with some of the cases I just saw this week. A woman comes in to see me who halachically did not consummate the marriage, because for the 4 years that she was married, he never touched her. A man comes to see me whose wife asked for a divorce because in that family she had 9 divorces, between her and 2 other siblings. A 66-year-old man is trying to get married because he's the only last survivor from the Holocaust, and if he doesn't have children, that last name is wiped out forever. A 27-year-old girl is on the phone with me today because she's been divorced twice. Fantastic girl with a great profession. Numerous people come to me with Asperger's that I try to that I'm training in terms of how to date effectively. And so there's a lot out there. That's what I wanted to start tonight's comments with. And so we need to get an education. You wouldn't go out and drive a car unless you took driver's ed. You need to know how to drive a car. Similarly, you need to know how to date today. It's not as simple as it once used to be. And in order to do that, first and foremost, we have to realize Hashem is in control. He runs the show. Ultimately, He's the boss, and He decides on the Shidduchim. Our mission is just to be we play the role of the Shluchim here. We're Shlichim, and we try our best as Shadchanim, as mentors and guides, to be able to help people meet their soulmates. But ultimately, it's Hashem. Perhaps I could share a beautiful story with you. A man went to heaven. There he met God, who showed him the footprints of life. Looking, the man saw that in most places there was 2 sets of footprints, his and God's. But in a few spots, there was only 1 set of footprints. The man said to God, I don't understand. I thought you promised me that you'd always be with me and you would walk with me. Why do I see in certain areas only 1 set of footprints? God answered, those are the times that I carried you. Hashem is always there. He's carrying us all the time. We just have to be cognizant of it. And if we think that it's over, and sometimes it seems hopeless, because I see a lot of older singles, so I have to share a very inspiring story with you about a Diane Farber, who describes about her life that she's 43, never married, no kids. I was having a tough time getting up the enthusiasm to pray for the same thing again and again, because it was Rosh Hashanah. There I was. 2 years ago, she recently wrote, with the high holidays now around the corner, and here we go again. 43, never married, no kids. I was having a tough time getting up to say to Hashem that I'd like to get married. How many times can you ask for the same thing and get the same answer? And so in that year, I was there in Shul in Rosh Hashanah in Los Angeles. I saw 2 of the young women in our community standing up throughout the entire Chazaras Hashatz of Musaf. These 2 girls, Sarah and Tova, were the daughters of my close friends. Both girls, 18 years old, just recently came back from seminary in Yerushalayim, and according to our community's custom, quote unquote, ready to get married. I knew that these girls would be praying to find their basherets. And I knew why they were standing up in Chazar in Musaf, because they realized it was just an extra zechus that would work for them. I knew that they felt that with that extra effort, Hashem would answer their prayers. And then I said to myself, how different their outlook is from mine. Though we pray for the same thing, I thought to myself, how better their chances to get married than mine. How lucky they are. I wish I had what they had. I wish I could do what they do with their faith. From my seated position, I envied them. I envied their tefillas. I envied their prayers. I believed, you know what's going to happen? Their tefillas will be answered and mine again will be rejected. And then I said to myself, they don't want to be married any more than I do. I thought from the comfort of my chair, their davening is not more worthy than mine. Maybe they're younger and stronger, I said to myself. And then I did something I didn't expect. I stood up. I stood up to show Hashem that my davening is as deeply felt as theirs. My desire to get married is as real as theirs and as sincere as theirs. To show Hashem that I'm not too tired, I'm not too old to embrace the responsibilities of marriage and have a family. And I did what I thought was the impossible. I stood up. I stood up. Each time the congregation stood and sat, I stood up. And during the songs I swayed, and during the silent prayers I wept. I pushed myself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And later that year, Sarah, Tova, and I were married within 6 weeks of each other. Two very lovely young ladies, and a woman old enough to be their mother. I planned my wedding as my two dear friends planned their daughters' weddings. We shared caterers, photographers, and lots of laughs as a season of planning for joy enveloped all of us. Last year, as the high holidays approached, I still had one tefillah unanswered. Which one is that? She wants a child. I understood the statistics, the physical realities, the unlikelihood of success, but I was married now. And like most married Jewish women, I wanted a child. I hoped for one. Was my desire any less because my body was old? In fact, at 44, my desire is even greater. And if I'm ever going to have a child, it's got to be this year. And I asked myself, can I summon the strength to do it again? To stand through the entire Musaf all over again. Sarah and Tova were no longer there, gone. They were off in Yerushalayim, where their husbands were learning in Kollel. So I made it through the Rosh Hashanah service. I felt good. I was determined, and I said anything is possible. But on Yom Kippur, my physical strength waned and failed. I stood, and then I just had to sit down. I felt so wiped out, I thought I was going to pass out. As I took my seat, I felt a terrible sense of despair. I said to myself, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I don't have it. I don't have the stamina. I can't do it on my own. I knew that standing was not required. And at the closing prayers of Ne'ilah, the whole congregation was standing. I was on my feet again. I knew everything was going to be decided there and then. Just before the end of the service of Ne'ilah, I leaned forward to my close friend, Judy. I whispered in her ear, Judy, can you ask for just one more neshama this year? Just one more? And then I burst into tears, fearing that I had failed. A few weeks later, I learned why my physical strength had failed me. For she was expecting a baby. I was expecting. Months later, I learned that Sarah and Tova were also expecting. Our due dates lining up close in the same way we got married. My two dear friends were about to become grandmothers for the first time. This year, Sarah, Tova, and I became mothers. So let's start by asking a question. What advice can divorced parents give their children? Let's learn from the people who didn't get it right. 1. Don't rush into marriage. It's very important. We tell them today to take your time. 2. Marry someone you look forward to seeing every day. It's so important. 3. Know that marriage does not change people. That the only person you can change in this world is yourself. And I'll get into this a little later. Make a list of what's important to you. I'll describe later why it's important for everyone to have what's called a needs list, a top 10 needs list. I'll explain in a little bit what that means. Next is be realistic. And with that in mind, hopefully we'll avoid the issue of chas v'shalom, of having a divorce. Okay, so we need a strategy. 3 men, Giovanni, Isaac, and Joe, are sentenced to 20 years in prison. Giovanni's the Italian, Isaac is the Jew, and Joe is the Polak. The prison warden asks each one of them, you're allowed to take one thing with you into your jail cell. What would you like? Giovanni says, I'd like a wife, Mr. Warden. And the warden says, granted. Isaac, the Jew, says, can I have a cell phone and a charger? And he says, granted. Joe the Polak asks for a case of cigarettes. And the prison warden says, granted. And the cells are locked. 20 years later, they're opened. First one to come out is Giovanni the Italian. And he says, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Because of your generosity and you let me take my wife, I'm now the proud father of 12 bambinos. Okay, great. The Jew now is let out, Isaac. He says, Mr. Warden, I'm so grateful to you. With the cell phone, I called all my old friends on Wall Street. I made so many trades. I'm a multimillionaire. I can't thank you enough. Joel the Polak comes out with a case of cigarettes and says to the warden, can you please spare a match? No strategy. So what good is it? Plan a strategy to develop your goals of a first-rate marriage. Developing an understanding of who you are and what qualities you need in another person, which will fill your needs and further your growth. Examine yourself. And I can be talking to the parents now so they can tell this to the children. Are you the best that you can be? Can you improve your appearance? I had a scenario recently from a girl that's out of the country. Unfortunately, she's about 30 or 40 pounds overweight. The several people that I set her up with, everyone would say the same thing to me. She's the exact person that I want personality-wise, but I just can't make it happen because of the physical appearance. So I said to her, I think you need to take a break and deal with that. And she is. Is it a sensitive subject? By all means, but it's an issue. Visit a gym, see a nutritionist, update the hairstyle, whiten the teeth, redo the makeup, change the glasses, put on contact lenses. Yes, these are all very important things. Work on improving your attitude. Warmth appeals to people, so learn to smile. I can't tell you how often I sit with people, I tell them, go home, lock the bedroom door, look at the mirror, smile for me 50 times. Do this every night for me. It's so important. These little subtleties are so critical to success. Developing a positive sense of self will not only help you in dating, it'll also help you build a better marriage. One who exhibits simchas achayim, a zest for and enjoyment of life, is most appealing. And again, when I help people create their top 10 lists, almost without exception, simchas achayim is always on the list. For without simchas achayim, how can you expect to make it in a long relationship? When the chips are down, how will you deal with adversity in life? I want a partner who knows how to deal with adversity. Rabbi Miller was my Rebbe. He told us something fantastic. And he meant it in a very good way. Life is all about acting in a good way. Meaning if you have a hard day, or we have several hard days, how do you approach your wife when you come home, or the husband? It was a miserable day. It was everyone was on top of me at work or at the job. You got to learn how to lighten it up a little bit and say Baruch Hashem. And he used to tell us a beautiful story. We're going to live 120 years. At the end of 120 years, our life is like on stage. The curtain's going to come down. There'll only be one personality in the audience, and that'll be Hashem clapping and saying, you did a great job. You learned how to live in this world and do the best that you could. Remember, we never get a second chance to make a great first impression. So ask yourself, or for that matter, your children, are the interpersonal skills all they can be? One of the things I do a lot is coach people how to speak and converse on a date. I'll get back into that a little bit later. So many people need help in that area, and that needs to be looked at. So for the record, one of my favorite books that I recommend is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Kodesh Kodashim. It's old, it's 70 years old, it's probably now in 10 or 20 languages, but it's worth its price in gold. You can get it on Amazon for $4. It's a great, great book. It's fantastic. So, and in order to be able to have a great attitude, Zelig Pliskin writes something beautiful. Test yourself for the next 30 days. Read this list at least 3 times a day. Number 1, I think appreciatively and gratefully. And so I make every single that sits in front of me say a thank you card that I either give them a copy or I send them a WhatsApp of, and I tell them to make a list of 50 gratitudes and to say it every day. Because that is very important for a great attitude. Gratitude makes me happy. It gives me simcha. And as a result, then it's conveyed to others. 2, I speak joyfully and kindly, which we spoke about. 3, I assume that there's good in everything. I look for the positive. That's so important. 4, I strive for meaningful goals. 5, I see myself the way I wish to be. You have to have a visualization. See yourself married. See yourself holding a baby. I focus on solutions. 7, I let challenges develop my character. If I recall correctly, when I was in high school, my quote was, stick to the fight when your hardest hit. It's when things go wrong that you mustn't quit. Success is failure turned inside out. I constantly can access positive states. And like I said before, I smile to mirrors. Okay, now, more into Hishtadlus. Networking how-tos. We got to make Hishtadlus. It's very important. Compile a list of potential contacts for your network, including extended family, relatives, close and not too close friends, people you've lost touch with, current and former teachers and rabbis, neighbors, co-workers, people from your synagogues, classes, community activities. You can gradually also add others who seem to be good resources. Local merchants, businessmen, businesswomen, customers, and friends of friends. I can't tell you, when I hear people's stories of how they met, it just defies the imagination. Well, he remembered me because she was the clerk at Pomegranate, and this one remembered me at Moshe's, and the things that I hear, the stories of how, so you've got to get out there and pitch. Ask 3 or 4 people who you know you well and respect for their good judgment and integrity to be your references. That's very important. And the references should preferably, my rule is, I like to see 2 references that are rabbinical, a rabbi, rebbitzin. I like to see 2 references that are personal friends that are married. I generally keep single people off the references. You never know, ayin hara or jealousy. I'd rather not have single people on the dating resumes. Unless you have no choice, but that's the rule of thumb. And tell the references, by the way, what you're up to. I'd still get today calls on people that I haven't seen in 6 or 7 years. There's one guy in Miami, when I used to live in Miami, I haven't been in Miami in 12 years. He still has me as his reference. I haven't spoken to the guy in a good 10 years. I don't know what's doing with him. So it's important that when you have a person as a reference, that you call them up and say, hi, you know what? I'm an occupational therapist now. I learn regularly. I can't tell you, like for example today, I was trying to pitch a person, a man. 3 or 4 of them called me and said, does he learn daily? Because I couldn't get it out of the references. It's important for them. Tell them about your life, what you're up to. If you have a problematic area of your background, it's better that your references know how to discuss that in a positive way. A divorce, for example, would be a good one. Right? Today I dealt with several of those, and I was given the humble job of calling the references to find out what happened with the divorce. And what were the dynamics there. Okay, so that's networking. Now, Yaakov Solomon has a beautiful little piece on time to move on. Nobody said it was going to be easy. The voyage in Shidduchim and the seas have never been more turbulent. The plight of ever increasing numbers of singles in our midst assumes major proportions. And now, with that in mind, let's talk about one of the most frightening 6-letter words in the English language. Can anyone guess? Change. Change, thank you. Change. Yes, you're afraid when you hear that word? Change. I should change. Why should I change? What did I do wrong? Maybe the change will be for the worse. What am I supposed to do? Can I just try it again? Wasn't it Einstein who said insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result? It's not going to happen. If it's not working, look at yourself and say, what can I do differently? If you keep getting the same result, maybe it's about time that I put into place a new strategy. But here's what happens, and he tells us. People say, this is where I buy my fish. I'm not changing. But the other guy may have better quality. It's okay. This is when I wake up. This is how I drive. This is where I buy my coleslaw. This is when I go to sleep. This is the Dvar Torah that I say every year for Parshas Vayigash. No change. And you know what? It's okay. There's a place for that. The Torah calls that consistency. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But like most things in this world, there's a downside to that. And that's called mitzvos anoshim el modeha. You become habituated to it. You keep doing the same thing. And it's not working. Let's say you're not being read shidduchim, and we know people like that. Or you keep getting the wrong ones, which I hear all the time from singles. They just don't read me the right people for me. And it's not working. So then maybe we have to take a look and to consider doing something else. Let's examine the first shidduch in the history of the world. Just to give you the proof. Eliezer concludes his pursuit because he's been charged with the job by Avram Avinu. Go find a wife for Yitzchak, my son. And he experiences everything that he wants. The conditions that he puts down, that I want the girl to be able to come out and give me water, gets it and gives it to his men and the camels, etc. Hashem does, a miracle for him, and the derech is shortened. Instead of a 10-day trip, it's a 3-day trip. And then suddenly he sits down with Lavan and Besuel, and he says the following: let's cut a deal. And I'll tell you what he tells them. If you want to do kindness and truth with my master Avram Avinu, good, it's fine. And if you don't want to, tell me now. Yamin or small. I'm ready to go right. I'm ready to go left. He sees all the indicators. He has kifitza sederech. He experiences a miraculously fast trip. He sees miracles left and right. The water from the well rises to Rivka. And yet, what does he say? I'm ready to move on a dime. Even though Hashem gave me all that I asked for, I don't care. I'm ready to go. The flexibility was extraordinary. And that's what we need today in dating. A bit of flexibility. A bit of thinking outside the box. I tried to explain that to a girl down south in another state just last night. He's a lawyer. He's 10 years older than her. Mid-40s. She's mid-30s. We're actually 8 years apart. He has a son, 19 years old. Guy's a Ben Torah. He's a fantastic guy. I know him, right? And he has a son that's, 18 years old. He's away. He likes this girl. She's a teacher. And I said to her, he's a great guy. You haven't gotten a person like this. He has a great job. He's an attorney. He studies as a chavrusa every day. I can't do it. I said, you're 35. He's 42. What are you thinking? No, I can't do it. The divorce thing. The kid's not even home. He's in yeshiva. He's in a dormitory. I can't do it. I said, please be realistic. I sit with mid-30s people all day long. Do you think that there's a Prince Charming out there who's 38 and 39 and normal? And suddenly he's going to pop up and never married before? Maybe. But he's a good guy with a great background and a great resume, who I know personally, who has great midos, checks out, the rabbis are fantastic, went to best yeshivas. This is what happens when people don't want to subject themselves to reality and a bit of change. So again, I only want a tall boy. I want a rich girl. I don't like blondes. Not for me. I can't marry someone with a beard. It's impossible. I just can't do it. I'll never marry a boy with an up hat or down. I hear every story in the book. Yeah, and this is what happens today because Western culture has infected us. I'll only go out with a professional. That's another good one. I said, what if he has an Amazon business and he makes $2 million a year? Would you say no to him? I can't marry Baal Tshuva. But today, it has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Right? But there are a lot of Baalei Tshuva today who, if you look into them and you do the proper research, they're good people. You know what? I want to tell you something. I'll never forget, a friend told a story about a line of people waiting to get 2 seconds of the Regera Rebbe's time. And for a bracha, right before Rosh Hashanah. Right? So, there was a person waiting for a bracha, a yeshiva bacher, and in front of him, there was a Baal Tshuva, who was telling the Rebbe his story a little bit, and then he got his bracha. So when the young man approached the Ger Rebbe, he says to him, Rebbe, I'd like a bracha. By the way, I'm not a Baal Tshuva. So the Rebbe says, why not? Aren't we all? There's something to be said by that. So obviously it's not across the board, but examine. You know, how many times do I see the most pristine girl sitting in front of me? Beis Yaakov poster childs. I can't tell you how often the mother's a Baal Tshuva or the father's a Baal Tshuva. Because I do the research, I do the history. So, again, you can't write off any category. You just don't know. You got to examine one by one and see. Do the due diligence. You have the right to do that. Changing our actions in pursuit of a shidduch can at times be a relatively minor challenge. Maybe it's a simple thing. Maybe it's a tie, a dress, or hairstyle. Or maybe it's our approach. Maybe it's our attitude. That's important. We have to really consider that. Okay. So again, the right person is not a perfect person. Here are some don'ts. Don't make unrealistic demands. Don't make snap judgments. Don't reject someone without giving him or her the same chance you would want for yourself. Don't ask silly questions like, do you put ketchup bottles on your elegant table on Shabbos? Don't make ridiculous remarks like, I can't date him because I heard he started walking it a little late. Be friendly and receptive when that person is on a date, when you're on a date. Give the person the time to loosen up, to feel comfortable and make a proper impression. Be open-minded. Oftentimes on the first date it takes a little time. How would you deal with this scenario? A girl flew in from another country to talk to me an hour before I'm supposed to be here, or get in the car to come here. She came so I could work with her as a shadchan to suggest some shidduchim for her. The minute she lands at the town, 3 suggestions come up in New York. And so she dates one of them. And something got over her, and she asked one of her friends to stop in the lounge and just bump into her, because she wanted her friend to give her an idea of what the boy's like. Okay? This is fresh off the last night. Okay. The mother of the boy gets wind of this and immediately goes kilters. No, I'm not having... What kind of behavior is this? What are you going to do? And she went nuts on the shadchan. No, it's not happening. And the shadchan was mighty good shadchan, and struggling and said, she didn't mean it, just, whatever. And she was able to restore it. So tonight, she's saying to me, what should I do? I said, here's my take on this. Tell him. And she told me the truth. She says, you know what? I was having a good time, and I wanted to get someone else's opinion. I said, tell him the truth. I was enjoying the experience, and I wanted to have my friend come by, and I apologize. I'm sorry if it offended you or your mother. That's it. Very straight. MS. Isn't it more important to find someone who loves and appreciates you, sharing your dreams, goals, and beliefs? That's the key. We need to find people who are going to be our soulmates that we have common values and common goals with. And so the key thing that we need to remember is determination. Determination, right? That's key. Not to give up. Determination makes all the difference between a person who's successful and a person who's not. Whatever you want to accomplish with your life, whatever you want to become, do you have this secret? The secret is determination. What great goal would you tackle if you knew you would not fail? What would you do if you received $1 million now? What would you do if you discovered that you only had 6 months to live? Determination is the key. We have to remain determined, and we can't give up no matter what. I was zochet to spend 12 years in Chaim, Berlin. The Rosh Yeshiva who started Chaim, Berlin was Yitzchak Hutner. In the 1960s, he gets a letter. This beautiful essay called "Lose the Battle but Win the War." From one of his students who was writing, Rabbi, it's not like the old days, he had moved to the Midwest. And he was talking about how idealistic he was in the Beis Medrash when he was in yeshiva. And now he feels he has a yerida, a deterioration. I'm not who I used to be. And he was down on himself. He was blaming himself. He was very tzibrochen, very depressed, very atzuv. And the Rosh Yeshiva writes back, your letter has reached my hand, your words have reached my heart. A failing that many of us experience is that when we focus on the great levels of accomplishments of great people, we focus only on how they're complete in that area. We omit mention of the struggles that raged within them. A listener would get the impression that these people came out of the womb perfect. They came out perfect. Everyone is awed at the purity of speech of the Chavetz Chaim, thinking that it was miraculous how this man was the ideal of not speaking Lashon Hara. And Rabbi Hutner writes, but who knows of the battles and the struggles and the obstacles and the slumps and the regressions that he, the Chavetz Chaim, encountered in his war with the Yetzer Hara until he became the Chavetz Chaim. That means all of us go through dips in life. And our responsibility is stay the course. Don't give up. It says, and he tells him something beautiful. Shlomo HaMelech writes, Kesheva yipol tzadik v'kam. Most of the world understands it, Kesheva yipol tzadik, because the tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up. No. We don't read it like that. Where do you put the comma? We say it like this, Kesheva yipol, because 7 times he fell or she fell. The regular person, tzadik v'kam. They got up, now they're a tzaddik. They weren't born that way. The road to greatness is paved on just getting up. When you have a slump or an obstacle. And he goes on to give him chizuk, to not give up. And to tell him that all your accomplishments are great and don't belittle them. Okay. Pressure. That's something we hear a lot about from the singles. It's the catchphrase of Shidduchim today. Everyone feels stressed because we all want the best husband or the best wife, the best daughter-in-law or the best son-in-law. Everyone worries about when and will they get married. And that choice seems to hover over their lives until it finally happens. We all have the same fears and we have the common prayers for it. So let me tell you, don't let the pressure get to you. Get to know yourself. Take the time to get to know the people that you date. And by the way, don't envy anyone because you never know what's going on in their lives. I see it firsthand in my life. Where people will sit in front of me that have millions of dollars. I'll give you an example. On Tu B'Av this year, they set out in an effort to daven for 500,000 singles worldwide. And Lev La'achim recruited about 30 rabbis to give little short video snippets on behalf of that effort. I was one of them. And when the videos went out, one of my friends got it, someone that I grew up with. I don't see him that often. But anyway, he sent it out to a non-religious woman. Fine. That woman calls me up. Hi, Dr. Jack, how are you? Can I send you my daughter, 33 years old? Fine. She comes in to see me in the ghetto where we live in Brooklyn. Anyway, and she starts wearing pants, whatever. And I'm just getting the background. And she tells me, my father and my mother, they don't work anymore. Good Lord, they want me to go to Italy next week for the 20th time. I don't want to go. Listen to this. She tells me, the mother's father, I could tell you now, he's worth 20 times Trump in terms of buildings. So I said to her, are you happy? No, I'm not happy at all. I said to her, I'm worth maybe half of what you got for your first birthday present. And I'm an Orthodox Jew. I have Torah. I have what to live for. I have a fulfilled life. Don't assume that people are happy or anything. Don't be jealous of anybody. And she said to me, Rabbi, I'd love to have a piece of that. Well, that girl right now is sitting in Neve. Took me a little while, but her and her friend are sitting in Neve, finishing up a 6-week course. Because they realize that money doesn't do it. But a life of Torah is what does it. A life of values is what does it. I told her, have you encountered, experienced what it means to have a Shabbat table? The pleasure of a Shabbat table, of a Yom Tov table, of raising a family, of having children. We're so lucky. You have no idea that we have such a beautiful life. Natan was the most eligible bachelor in town. Everyone knew it. He was handsome, well-liked, and his father was very rich. Natan made sure everyone knew that one day it's all going to be mine. He dressed well, drove a fancy car, and was known to be generous when he took the girls out on dates. On the other hand, on the other side of town was a girl named Nechama. She was stunning. She came from a poor home, but had exquisite taste. She dreamed about marrying a handsome man, setting up a beautiful home, and raising gorgeous children who would lack for nothing. When she got her turn with Natan, there was little question that they were quote-unquote the perfect match. Natan felt a sense of pride being with such a beautiful girl, just like he felt when he bought his first sports car. A kinyan, an acquisition. They both wanted the finest things in life and paid little attention to the other's midos, which should be the first thing you should be looking for. After all, most of life's difficulties can be overcome with a little cash. And what an impressive couple they would make as they would be seen down Park Avenue or wherever they lived. And when they became engaged, everyone said, but of course, he, Mr. Money, she, the gorgeous beauty. They were the glamour Shidduch of the city. Heads would turn when they would walk into the room or a restaurant, as people now envied Nechama and her new life of wealth. And the couple had 2 girls in rapid succession, plenty of household help, just to make sure life was as easy as possible. She kept a strict diet in order to make sure that she was in perfect shape. Anytime she got a request to help some with gemach, no, I don't have time for that. One day, I'll get to it. Natan, however, had many stresses at work. His father was a very demanding boss, and he felt like he was an indentured servant. And every time his father would make a request for something, Natan had to jump and go get it for him. Natan consoled himself at the refrigerator, and his handsome face was quickly covered with worry lines. And 3 years into the marriage, the glamorous couple was almost unrecognizable. Natan was now 80 pounds overweight, and the swagger that he once carried resembled more the defeated slump of an old man. Nechama, always angry, always wearing a perennial look of anger in her face. Natan was always indulging the daughters, taking them to the toy stores to buy them credit card purchases because he was never home. She was the only source of their discipline. But what happened next is almost too heartbreaking to recount. Natan's father passed away, and it was discovered that as many millions of dollars that he had, he owed even more. The entire family was left penniless except for an insurance policy that provided for Natan's mother. That's it, no money. For 11 years until their divorce, she followed Natan from city to city, job to job. He was never content to make a modest but steady living, always looking for the big win. And Nechama did little to discourage his thinking. After Natan's second bankruptcy, she said she couldn't take it anymore. She moved out with the children, took them to another city. And the demise of their marriage was not surprising. After all, they never really got married for the right reasons. What's especially tragic is we sat down with Nechama before she met Natan and we asked her a question. Nechama, what would you rather have? A financially okay husband who dedicates his life to making you happy? Or would you like an extremely rich husband who's marrying you because of your looks? There's little doubt what you would have told us. Or if we sat down with Natan and asked him, what would you rather have? A gorgeous wife who has no time for anyone, who's selfish, or someone more selfless, more kind, more considerate? There was little doubt that what he would tell us. The problem is, people don't stop to ask themselves these questions before they get married. They just barrel ahead. I had a girl, she's 25 years old, when she got married. 7 months later, the marriage was over. I got to know her when she was about 27. What happened? He sat in bed every day, didn't even go to work. Completely fooled me. I didn't do any research. So how'd you end up getting married to him? Listen to her answer. I was the only one single from my high school class. I couldn't take the pressure anymore. No other work was done to determine this guy's background. It took me 2 years to get her the get. Thank God he gave it to us. People just barrel ahead trying to fulfill their expectations without questioning, where did my expectations come from? Are they Jewish hashkafa, or is it Western poisoning? The toxicity that we get from our cell phones or our emails or tablets, call it what you want. What are the ingredients of a successful marriage? How do I know if I'm with the right person? For that, we can turn to some of our great Gedolim. Too many people go into marriage totally unprepared to work at it, unprepared to commit, unprepared to sacrifice, unwilling to bend, unwilling to compromise, unwilling to respect the other person, unwilling to devote themselves to making the other person happy. They think of me, make me happy. I want it my way, do it my way. And they're seeking more money, more understanding, and more excitement. Believe me, the numbers tell the story of how many more divorces we have today in the frum world. The numbers tell the story. It's shocking. Ladies and gentlemen, marriage is about giving and sharing, caring and thinking about your spouse's needs and desires. When both people work at it, the marriage can work. Everyone wants to be happy when they get married. You'll be happy when you learn how to make the other person happy. Standing under the chuppah, Rav Eliyahu Dessler, the famous Maggid of Musar, says, yes, the chassan and kala want to give. And each one is dreaming of how to be the giver to the other one. And then suddenly a few years roll on, and they're thinking to themselves, what about me? And my joy? Emen ani li mi li. If not for me, who's going to be for me? But Rav Dessler continues. Please remember the rest of the pasuk. Im ani la'atzmi ma'ani. If I'm only for myself, what am I? A narcissist. This is an accusation that I hear again and again from divorced women, and mostly when they tell me about the kind of person they were married to, or sometimes it can be the opposite too. Such a person focuses on the concept of Bishvili Nivra Olam, the world was created for me. But we have to remind that person, Lo la'atzmo Nivra Olam, you weren't created just for yourself. Rather, you were created to give to the other person. And if you keep your focus on that, you'll have a fantastic marriage. Your greatness, Rav Dessler tells us, is defined by the size of your ani. An individual is I, or ani, is I alone. He's a small person in our eyes. The individual who incorporates his wife and children, his ani is even bigger. The one who incorporates himself, his wife, his children, and his extended family, bigger than that. And the one who incorporates his congregation, bigger than that. And the one who incorporates his community, bigger than that. So you're judged by how much you care for others, how big your orbit is. A successful marriage depends on being the right person, then finding the right person. You could take the wrong person and elevate that person and make that person the right person. It's great to marry someone you love, but it's more important to love the person you marry. The idea is to choose your love and then love your choice and work at it. Do the best at it, to work at it. Very important to work on this area called self-esteem. You must feel good about yourself in order to feel good being with someone else. I often have workshops on this, especially with a lot of young girls who just have problems with self-esteem, confidence. And it's important that while they are in that single world, to work on self-esteem and strengthen that self-esteem, to build that self-esteem. Build your perception of yourself. Should not dependent on what anyone else says about you. If you lack self-esteem, you'll take offense and misinterpret much of what the other person is going to tell you in life, your spouse. You should like the person you're dating, but it's even more important to like yourself when you're with that person. How do you build self-esteem? Take a look at all the things you enjoy doing in life and focus on that. You're a great photographer? Well, focus on that. You're a great cook? Then that's where you spend your time at. Take up other things. Expand your repertoire of your talents and skills. That's so important. And then examine your expectations. Are they unrealistic? You may want someone great looking, but perhaps you're not there. Or maybe despite your fabulous looks, you're destined for someone who's okay looking, but has a great personality. So it's important that we have to realize that perfection is the enemy of good. Don't keep waiting thinking that someone better will come along. I recently read an email about a 36-year-old man who writes an email. And he says, I did a poll of all my friends who I grew up with. And I asked them, who now surpassed me, they married in their 20s. Was she perfect? And almost everyone came back to tell him she was good enough. That's what key. Good enough. So we need to readjust our thinking. It's wonderful and rare to fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. So it's important that we have to become realistic. Some cases that are out of the box. Why age is just a number. Growing up in a secular home in Ohio, in college, I spent a year in seminary in Eretz Yisrael. When the year came to an end, I considered Shana Bet, but my Rebbe advised me to go back, move to New York and start dating. So I trusted her, packed my bags and took the leap. In the process of becoming frum, I had to do a lot of serious soul searching and self-reflection. In addition to learning about life and my purpose in the world, I gained clarity about what I wanted for my future husband and what I wanted my future home to look like. Entering into Shidduchim at 24, I had a pretty clear picture of the kind of person I hoped to marry. A nice, smart, earner, learner who shared my values. Sounds good. Because I had done a lot of self-discovery in my tshuva process, I knew I wanted to date someone who, like me, was not secure in his Yiddishkeit, but firm in his hashkafos. I didn't feel comfortable dating someone who was still in transition religiously and hashkafically. It's also important to me that I marry a man who was mature, emotionally aware, and stable. I told my Rebbitzin and others who read me Shidduchim that I was perfectly comfortable dating someone older. I assumed someone with a little more life experience was more likely to have the qualities I was searching for, not to mention greater clarity about who they are and what they wanted. Although I knew my Rebbitzin was searching for prospects on my behalf, I also did a little of my own ishtadlus. I met singles at Shabbos tables by visiting different families. I visited and followed with shadchanim. I kept up with them. I'll tell you, and I'm proud of this. Anybody who I speak to, I say to them very clearly, stay in my face. Bug me. Because like anyone else who does this work, there's a constant stream of people who want help. It's okay. If anything, I help the people who bug me more, because I'll be on their case more. So that's fine. Do that. I attended shurim on dating and marriage, investing in my personal growth as I continued to search for my beshert. And the 2 years following my return from seminary, I dated a handful of bachrim. Some of those experiences were disappointing and even painful, but I learned from them. Stayed positive, davened endlessly for clarity. And as Hanukkah neared, I was invited to a party being hosted by a Rav and Rebbitzin in my neighborhood I had gotten to know. When I knocked on the door, the Rebbitzin looked a little surprised to see me. Wow, you're early. I thought I'd showed up about 15 minutes early, and I intended to offer to help with some last-minute prep. Why not? Volunteer, help them. I guess you didn't read the text, the Rebbitzin said, clarifying the time had been changed to an hour and a half later. She warmly invited me in, and I helped with the cooking and the setup. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. In stepped Hirsch, a man who, like me, clearly did not get the text that the time had changed. The moment I saw him, I was struck with an indescribable feeling that this is the man I would like to marry. Realizing the error, Hirsch rolled up his sleeves and offered to help. We introduced ourselves, awkwardly and quietly set up. We barely said a word to each other during the party, but I just couldn't shake the strange, intense feeling, maybe. The next day I called up the riveting inquiring about Hirsch. She told me that he too had called her husband inquiring about me. I learned that Hirsch was 38-year-old Baal Tshuva who was learning full-time. I was 26, 12 years his junior, but the age difference honestly did not concern me. I knew I wanted a mature husband, and if that maturity and clear sense of self came with a 12-year age difference, I was okay with that. Although I was looking for an earner learner, I discovered through inquiries that Hirsch had a strong work ethic, was diligent in his studies in the Beis Medrash, and had recently started actively searching for job opportunities. She did her homework. Again, I was comfortable with that. Both Hirsch and I gave the green light and went on our first date the following week. Despite the feeling I got when I first saw him, I was a bundle of nerves. He surpassed my expectations. He was sweet, he was smart, and certain of himself and his convictions. My parents were more concerned with his full-time status as a student. We married after a 3-month engagement and have been building a beautiful home together ever since. There are a few lessons to be learned here. Number one, age is just a number. So many people obsess over age. So many singles obsess over it. Some set rigid limit rules. I'll never date a girl younger than me, or he can be maximum 3 years older than me. I just had that today. A 34-year-old man, I called a 38-year-old girl, and he said yes to her. And she said no. I couldn't believe it. No, he's younger than me. 5 minutes. Okay, got it. Beautiful. Yeah. Look at the person's ethic, not his job title. I just cut to the chase. One second. Okay. How do I recognize, and I'll close with this, the right person from the wrong person? A marriage can fail because people are not able to judge their marriage partner with objectivity. Is your attraction towards the person you're dating based on an objective appraisal of their qualities, or you're projecting virtues where there are none? Don't close your eyes, unwilling to see what you don't want to see. If you're looking for someone cultured and refined, don't settle for someone narrow-minded and crude. If you're searching for someone spiritual, don't tolerate someone who's materialistic and talks about money and travel and good times all the time. If you want a warm and happy and accepting spouse, don't settle for someone who's depressed, self-centered or judgmental. Search for a friend, someone you can talk to, someone you can confide in, someone who listens to you, someone who you can understand and understands you, someone who values your opinion, someone you can trust, and someone whose character you admire. That's very important. Someone with a healthy self-esteem, and someone who knows how to mind their boundaries. About a month ago, I get a WhatsApp from someone. Is it appropriate? Something bothering me, Rabbi, he tells me. And I'm not crazy about it because it's really bothering me. Is it right that my wife should open my cell phone every night and read my private WhatsApp messages? I said, excuse me? I have a phone. My wife has a phone. I don't know what goes on in her phone. There's something called trust. That's violating the boundaries. Is that person extremely sensitive and overly dependent? Will this get on your nerves? Is that person complimentary or they frequently criticize? Dating is the time to find out. Are they inflexible? Are they dominating? I have 3 rules for girls that I told my own 3 daughters that are married. I want you to look out for 3 areas. The girls specifically I tell this to. In Hebrew, kamtan, kaptan, ka'asan. Look out for anger. Look how he talks to the maitre d' and the waitress. And if he gets angry if the car doesn't come right away by the parking attendant, kasan, kaptan, inflexible. Is it my way or the highway? Does he give the girl a choice to select anything? And kamtan, is he cheap? A guy who's cheap and not generous with money is a life in Gehenna. 3 things you need to keep on the eye out for. Okay, so is that person dominating? Are they happy and easygoing or serious and intense? Do you enjoy each other's company? Is he pleasant to be with? Do we have common interests? Look for maturity. Look for responsibility. Let me just close with a basic Q&A that I put together for broken engagements. What's the best way to prevent a broken engagement? Answer: prevention, education, and learn how to look out for warning signs. 2, what's the best strategy to implement before starting to date? Create a top 10 needs list of what I need in terms of character qualities. In your opinion, what do I think is the biggest mistake that people are making in dating today? Again, not creating a top 10 list. What 3 cardinal red flags? I mentioned them to you, especially for the girls. As a dating mentor, what midah do you look for in a client and their dating partner? I said before, simchas hachaim to me is very important. A person with a joie de vivre, a zest for life. Can you marry someone on the expectation that you will change in the future? Ladies and gentlemen, the only person you can change is yourself. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come tonight and be able to share just a bit of what's happening in the Shidduchim world. And now I think we're opening the rest of the evening up to Q&A. So please, I'd be happy and delighted to answer any questions. I'm just going to grab some water.
The questions can come from any perspective. The perspective of a shadchan, the perspective of a single, the perspective of a layman. You're someone who wants to think about singles that you know, relatives or friends or grandchildren. So
and they could be anonymous. You don't have to, send it up on a card or a piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Either stand up or write it out and give it. And we had pads and bring. Anyone with the first question? So I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. What if we have an idea, we think about 2 people and we're thinking, I think it's a good idea, but I'm not a professional shadchan. If you weren't a professional doctor, you wouldn't think, I think I know the treatment for them. So we're not professional. We got a little sense of what this is about now. But who do we suggest it to? Do we do it ourselves? Do we go to a professional shadchan? Do we talk to the parents? What do we do with our ideas?
Good question. It depends on the resources you have at hand. If you have access to a professional shadchanim with a good track record, I would hand off. But certainly today, I don't ever discourage anyone from trying to play that role because we need all the help that we can get. But if you have access to a friend who's a shadchan that knows what they're doing, obviously professional shadchan is key. And I always tell this to people. And the reason why is because they know how to manage the relationship well. I've seen people make recommendations, but they don't know how to manage the relationship and it falls apart. How often something that was said could be fixed, could be rectified? Just the case I told you today with the girl from the other country that I saw 2 hours ago. Here's what you do. Tell them this and done. And apologize and something. It's an idea. But people walk away from great potential opportunities because they could have been solved with a little of experience. So if you have access to a shadchan, then hand off. If you don't, by all means do it. But then maybe you can reach out for shadchanim call me all the time for help in terms of what should we do, how should we react to this, and don't ever be embarrassed to ask for help. There are wonderful people in Klal Yisrael that are willing to give their time and their resources and their energies to help others. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you address
Sure.
your opinion of the impact of parental financial support on a couple on the rise of the divorce in the Orthodox community?
Are we talking about guys that are going to learn?
I'm talking about it winds up being 6 people that are in a marriage, because you have 2 sets of parents that are financially supporting a couple, and in my opinion, it's creating a lot of conflict and hence adding to the divorce.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was born in Cairo, Egypt. My role model was the Rambam. Every year my father would take me to his shul, and I adapted my life around him, which is like Yeshiva University, Torah U'Madah. Our mission in life is to learn Torah, but to also make a living. Okay. So I come from the school of thought that people need to be independent. Now, it's okay. My personal perspective is that I hardly ever helped my kids after they got married. I didn't feel that that was appropriate, except for my oldest daughter, whose husband was in Kollel. I gave a little bit of help for the first 8 months, and I was out of it at that point. I come from a different school of thought, that a person needs to strap their boots and learn how to figure out how to make a living. And that particular husband, by the way, is extraordinarily successful in that he balances 4 chavrusas that pay him, plus he's a Rebbe, plus he works wholesale. So, yes, you're right. It definitely is creating a crisis, because now you have a situation where they have these training wheels and they never come off. And then where's the end? Where's the end to this stuff? Go ahead.
First, thank you very much for your talk. Second, what do you think of these dating websites?
Okay. They play a role. However, the problem is with the dating websites, you can manufacture any identity you want. And that's a problem. And as a result, you never know who you're getting. It's Purim Kol HaShana. Purim every day of the year. So, oftentimes when people come into me and I hear and I take the dating history, a lot of the time they spent on websites. Like, some of them are well-meaning, they mean well, and some of them have, like, some of the more monitored ones are good, but you have to be a little bit cautious in terms of doing your research, especially the ones that have a plethora of volume, because on those websites people can essentially manufacture any identity that they want to manufacture. You have to do your due diligence and check them out. My favorite's always going to be word of mouth or reference. Someone mentions a Shidduch to you, and then the person and the local shadchan reads the Shidduch. But short of that, if a person isn't getting suggestions for what it is, and they have to turn to those websites, do it, but with a grain of salt. A degree of caution is in the air.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I dabble a little bit into it.
Good for you.
I recently just came across a situation where the girl told me she doesn't send pictures, and I wanted to know what and I heard her side, like why she doesn't send pictures. She said, you don't see clean in a picture. A picture doesn't really show what a person is like in person, and if you want to meet me, and if you don't, but I'm not sending a picture. And it actually turned off the shidduch, like the person didn't want to.
Right.
So, and I didn't really even know how to deal with it, because I guess I heard both sides of it, but I was wondering what's the norm? Like, is pictures a must, or are girls allowed to say we don't want to send pictures, or what should the shotgun say in that situation?
When I moved back from Miami Beach and I wanted to enroll my children in the New York yeshiva system where they used to be, because I lived there for 8 years, I tried to get my son into a different Rebbe's classroom. And the principal looked at me and said, Dr. Cohen, don't even try. You can't fight City Hall. And so my answer to you is, that's the way of the world. I'm a believer of, I work with the system until someone is ready to revolutionize it and say no pictures across the board. But there's a rule of the land. Women are emotional and men are visual. And I'll tell the girl, if she tells me she doesn't want to send pictures, I'll say, I'll never force you, but I think it's to your detriment. Go ahead.
I have a comment, and certainly I'm curious what your feedback is. Approaching the dating along the lines of what you were saying, Marsha, there's sometimes like too many people can get involved.
Yes.
Whether it's the relationship, the marriage.
Absolutely.
And I think that you had mentioned key terms: reality, change, pressure. And since this is mostly a room filled with parents,
right,
I think it's very important that parents get the message that Just because your child isn't married, it's not a crisis.
Good point.
We can't treat them like they're a crisis. We have to love them for who they are, married, not because what we think they're missing out on or what they should be giving us, our nachas. Like we have to just love them for who they are. And I think once parents get that, everyone's going to relax and let Hashem step in and take over. But if we're all trying to manipulate, we leave Hashem out of the picture.
5-star comment. I loved it. Fantastic. Absolutely. Well said. Thank you. Great contribution. Cool.
What happens if you find that your child is being set up with the wrong type of person? I mean, in yeshiva today, we have yeshiva people that do their whole design of the resumes and the things that go back and forth.
Right.
But in the young Israel, kind of down. We consider box north and I put my children in a box. And I find it very difficult that my family wants to set up my children with yeshivish people, which I am not. And I find myself in a crossroad of the world that I'm not quite sure. My children are independent. My children are educated. My children work for a living. My children go to college. My children are wonderful, well-adjusted human beings who have wonderful social lives and go out into the world and are not sitting home and not doing their thing. However, I'm finding that I'm not finding the young ladies in my, I have 3. The young ladies are given boys that are not sure what they're going to do, don't know what their idea is, are thinking about it, don't have some sort of plan somewhere. And Simchas HaChaim is definitely not a shortage in our house, nor are we a quiet, subdued, and whatever it is type of house. We are a
jovial bunch.
We are a very hysterical, joyful bunch of people that unfortunately had a misfortune that my husband has passed away.
Uh-huh.
And I find that people that are given to us, I don't understand the thinking. I raised my children to do what they needed to do and what they're still doing. And I'm confused, I'm conflicted. We tell our children to go out and do their very best. We expect our children to go and do their very best. And I'm not looking for the very best. We are looking for kind. We are looking for compassionate. Mm-hmm. We are looking for goal-oriented. And I'm finding that there is a lack of that out there, and I'm confused by it. And I don't know what to do.
What are your friends doing that are similar to you in terms of spiritual observance level?
What does that mean?
Meaning that where do they search for their shidduchim?
They're out and about.
So what you're saying to me is that there's a disconnect between who your kids are and who they're being read to.
Correct. And I'm looking for what they're looking for. They're shomer, they're out and professional and doing what they need to do. I'm looking for a nice guy. And they've been set up with, we don't know what we're going to be. You're 28 and 29 and 30 years old and you don't know what you're going to be. We're given boys who have no direction of where they're going, and it confuses me. It confuses me on the part of the parents who raise these lovely boys or lovely people. I'm confused by what we teach our children. Is it to get married and that's the goal? Because, me and my husband, I was 17, my husband was 21, we lived for 35 years and we were married and had a very nice marriage. Is that the goal? Or is the goal that we should put our children in homes that are healthy with people that are healthy? What's the goal here?
Well, you have the right premise for proper living. My concern is why the individuals that are representing or advocating on your behalf trying to match them with people that have a high discrepancy from them. I'm wondering why that's taking place.
That's my question.
So you and I maybe need to have a private conversation as to who you're working with and why you're missing the boat on that.
Why am I missing the boat? Why is the boat not?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not fair. And why something's wrong with the person who's advocating on your behalf or representing your
They
interests.
say this is what's available in your category.
Time to move on and work with someone else.
In your category, in the young Israel category,
Yes.
this is where it's at. Take it or leave it. And if not, then go yeshivish.
You can't change and become a chameleon like that.
No.
You are who you are.
I'm just wondering how to go about searching another ship, another boat, another venue, another form. I'm at wit's end to understand how that works. Because if you're told to go to Shadchanim, we have yeshivish, we thank you very much, it's been a pleasure seeing you, but if you're not yeshivish, zeigezit, have a nice life. I wore a sheitel for 35 years. I was not, it's a different, I know I'm getting very personal, I'm just wondering, as parents, what we're teaching our children when we're putting them out there in the world. That's my question. Is the goal to get married, or is the goal to be happily married? Is the goal to let's seal the deal? I have all my kids are married, and this one's miserable, that one's miserable, the other one's miserable. Let's all have
Right.
Shabbos at the tish. That doesn't.
I hear you. So hopefully maybe we can have a private conversation to eliminate some of those representatives and install some new ones.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One more question, and then
We'll go downstairs.
Yeah, I have a couple
I'm here as a,
announcements.
as a chef and as a parent, and
Sure.
actually as a physician too, so like in a year. And my best solution to helping I have 5 daughters.
Right.
My best solution to getting my daughters married is to help other people get married. I feel like
Great idea.
that balance. So I'm on all these lists, and running between appointments and stuff, I'm just setting up resumes all day. And so I have a few questions. My first question is, I find, I send out, let's say, maybe in the last 6 months, say I send out 100 resumes. So what I do is I know a lot of the girls, because I have 5 girls and they have a lot of friends, so I look through all the guys, and then I send, and actually I set people up as old as 60 or 70 too, but friends of mine or other people in my neighborhood. But I find that so often, especially the guys from, let's say, 22 to 20 to 32, 99% of the time, they say they're busy, And so now I have a new strategy, which I got from this other shadchan, which is not to send an email saying, oh, this is a great idea for you, sounds perfect. I send an email saying, I have a great idea for you, let me know when you're available. That just kind of pique their interest, but they don't just look at a resume in 1 second, they say they're busy, and then that's it, you can never send the resume back. And so sometimes that works better. And the other thing is then I have to write little notes to myself, call again in 2 weeks, send another email in 2 weeks, I give them my phone number, call me, we'll discuss it. Some guys call me, discuss it. But I find that, you could set up 100 resumes and maybe 3 people you could set up. And I don't let the girls know that all these, if they say they're busy or if they say they're no, because I don't want to discourage anyone. I figure let me take the brunt of it, but I'm just wondering if there's any better strategies than that when you're doing it the way, when you're just getting all these lists and you have all these girls and you want to set them up.
Our daughters are
One of
friends.
her daughter's one of those people. And that's my first question. The second one is that, my daughters and I understand I have one daughter who's very happily married, in law school, and I have another daughter who's amazing and getting divorced, and 2 other daughters who are dating, and they're all I push them to the professions. And just as an aside, I just read an article today that some people think, oh, it's not such a great idea, don't let all these girls go into all these professions, and it's harder for them to get married. But I just want to say, when I was going to medical school and I became a doctor, I had friends who said, I'm getting married soon, I'll be a secretary. And 10 years later, 15 years later, they didn't get married, they were still secretaries. So that last question is, I find that the girls who they're not yeshivish, and they're not modern, and they're not YU, and they're professional, and they're bright, and they're spunky, and they're beautiful. It's very hard to find those guys that are in between. Like, it's so much easier if they're modern.
Tell me about
if
it.
they're yeshivish. But then that middle part, it's just very hard.
They're so overqualified compared to the guys.
Every shopper says it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay. So any thoughts of how to get some of these guys to say yes? Any suggestions?
I was frustrated myself until last year I gave a class called The Golden Pearls of Shidduch by Chaim Kanievsky. Because I was used to a higher success rate in life and everything else that I did.
Right.
And then until I saw this, when someone came into him and says, you know what, I've been dabbling in Shidduch, I'm averaging 1 in 500. He told him that's a great statistic. And that's it. You think you're doing a good job. I don't think, what else would I do? I probably did I still do it the old-fashioned way. Hi, I have a nice girl or a nice guy to show you. Would you be interested? Yours is even more interesting and more innovative.
I'm just saying.
I like it.
And I want to say that every time someone says, like sometimes the shotgun says, oh, I'm so sorry, someone else said no to one of your daughters. I'm like, Hashem just, it's not the right one. Like, I think we also have, just like you were, we have to have the right attitude. Which
right.
Every time they say no, it's because this wasn't the one that Hashem wanted for you. And to stay really upbeat and positive, not only do we have to my daughters have a great life at this point. The ones who aren't married are doing great things, but
they're going to Kenya next week.
Yeah, they're going to Kenya. But I stay very upbeat and positive, and I think we as parents, as shotguns, have to just kind of stay upbeat and positive.
Boy, is that so true.
It's not this one, it'll be the next one.
Yeah.
You know?
What motivates me is not success per se, but the constant effort on behalf of Klal Yisrael. You have to think more globally. And that's it. To just work on yourself, to always self-energize yourself.
Right.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to continue the questions, but wait, please wait. We have a couple of announcements, a few first words. We will continue, so anyone that still has questions, Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen will come down with us. Thank you. This was a powerful presentation.
Thank you.
Intricate, comprehensive, and you really spoke to every perspective, any question we could have. And feel comfortable asking anything that wasn't presented. So I thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
For that.
My pleasure.